Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at something that people have always asked about, but I never really gave a satisfactory answer. And that is how to use the rudder. It's one of those things that if you're into flight simulation and you haven't bought yourself a set of rudder pedals, you're really missing out. That's a part of flying that we don't give enough credit to because it really is a fundamental and really critical component, especially when you're dealing with nasty crosswind landings and things like that. So what is the rudder all about? Well, it's that little thing that sits in the back of the airplane right there. And when I kick my rudder pedals, you can see it doing a little happy dance just like that. All the rudder does is it controls yaw. That's it. So obviously there are times when we want the yaw to do a certain thing. For example, if I'm pointing my nose down, I want it to fly sideways for some reason, I could kick my rudder over to the right and the entire aircraft would now fly sideways. Now it's worth noting at this point that the aircraft is not actually traveling to the right. The aircraft is just skidding. If I want to look at this vertically, the direction I'm actually facing is the direction my camera is currently going, but the aircraft itself is pointed off to the right. This is unlike a boat's rudder. When you kick a boat rudder over, of course, the entire boat will start to kind of turn from its butt there. I'm going to go ahead and release that real quickly. For us as flying, the two most common uses for the rudder is, correcting for adverse yaw, which we'll take a look at in a second, or applying a crosswind landing, giving us a little bit of extra correction in order to make it so that we can safely go. So we'll deal with the first one, which is kind of the most subtle and hardest one to get your muscle memory right first, and that is adverse yaw. If you take a look right here as I'm taking this turn, you'll probably notice underneath my little wing there, you have that little black ball, and you can see that that black ball is remaining mostly in the center of those two pieces there. So what I'm going to do is I'm currently flying this as a coordinated turn. The aircraft is pointing in the direction. It is not skidding. It is not slipping. It is not doing anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and slowly move my controls back to this left, and I'm going to release them. As you can see, the ball remained mostly centered throughout that entire process. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to intentionally not use my feet to help us out. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the yoke, and do you see that ball shoot off to the right? I'm going to pull the yoke hard to the left. Do you see the ball shooting off to the left? That is because you've now created a skid with this particular aircraft. And again, different aircraft are going to have different sensitivities to that particular maneuver. And as you'll find out very quickly, each aircraft has a different sensitivity for the rudder too. And what is that all about? Well, if you take a look at the aircraft from the back for a second here, you'll notice that when I execute a left turn, that my left aileron lifts, which reduces the lift of this wing, and my right aileron deflects downward, which increases the lift of this wing. Now remember, if you increase the lift of something, you also increase the induced drag. So what's happening is as I'm taking this turn here, I'm actually causing this whole aircraft to twist to the right in addition to start its banking process. Now, if I don't compensate for that with the rudder action, what will happen is we'll fly our aircraft into a skid. Matter of fact, I'll go ahead and unpause real quickly here. Let's go ahead and correct my little boo-boo here. I'll just do it real hard. And you can see that when I do this, do you see how the tail kind of has a sort of like weird little whoa to it? Over-exaggerate it for you. And you can see the whole aircraft is now skidding when I'm turning. Oh my gosh, it's so difficult to do this without in first person. Oi! So how do we fix that? Well, the way we fix that is when we apply aileron movements to our controls, we're going to apply a small amount of rudder to it. So let's go ahead and take a look at that ball for a second here. So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and show you my aileron too, so you can kind of see both back to back. I need to be able to see where I'm going here when I do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip my aileron to the left, and I'm also going to push the left pedal at the same time. That looks good, and now I'm going to return them back to the center. I'm going to push the right aileron, and I'm going to push the right yoke at the same time. And I'm going to turn it back to the center. So if I look down at the floor, when I'm taking my left turns, you can see I'm using a little bit of left foot. Now when I bring it to the center, I bring my aileron and the rudder pedals to the center. When I come the other way, I simply invert to the maneuver. So it's almost like when you're moving the aileron, you're just moving the rudders at the same time as you're moving the aileron. Ooh, I feel sorry for my passengers if I had any. Now, one of these things you're going to determine, and you're going to realize very quickly, is the harder your aileron usage, the more drag you're going to create with that wing, the harder you're going to have to apply the rudder action. If I take a very, very, very gentle turn here, I'm barely pushing the rudders for it at all. It's worth noting that technically when the ailerons are neutral, you really shouldn't have to use much rudder unless you're having an excess power that's creating a slight twist, torquey sort of a situation. So I'll go ahead and start coming to the right, and all I'm doing is applying a little bit of right foot at the same time as that right aileron. I bring them both to the center at the same time. Now, when you start getting comfortable making those movements without having that ball move at all, and again, you can see how smooth that was there, start working to make it hard. You'll find that it requires a lot of rudder in order to make the aircraft to safely make those turns with a greater amount. You'll actually find problems where that little ball will actually lag the action you're taking. Oh, that's a lot of rudder. And another thing you're going to find out when you start experimenting with the rudder and trying to keep the plane perfectly coordinated is the fact that the aircraft itself, depending on your speed, is going to have a big impact on the performance of the rudder. And you're also going to determine that different aircraft have different levels of rudder response. This particular one, because it is so small, is a very responsive rudder. So the other thing we use the rudder for is for the purposes of helping us with a crosswind landing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set myself up here. Whew! I'm not used to this aircraft rudder. This one's a very, 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 very soft. A lot of the rudders I deal with, because of the high-speed planes, you really got to stomp on them to make them do stuff. Oh, that's almost full deflection of the rudder there. All right, there we go. And we'll apply full deflection on that side. Perfect. Nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of magic here. Move us back. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to intentionally create a crosswind so that we can take a look at what that's going to look like. Go ahead and push myself over here, line myself up like that. That looks pretty good right now. Let's see what we have for a heading. We have a heading of west, so let's go ahead and create a northerly crosswind here. Ground level, we'll make the wind come directly out of the north. And we'll make it a 10-knot crosswind, because why not? All right, so what's going to happen now? So now what we're going to do is we're going to intentionally skid the plane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my left aileron, I'm going to stick it downwards, I'm going to stick my right foot forward in order to keep my plane lined up with the center line of the runway. So let's go ahead and unpause. Let's get some nice sturdy flaps here. All right, it's a pretty nasty gust. I need to see what the gusts are for this. What are the gusts? Speed 0. Well, apparently they're just my imagination. Oh well. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start sliding. Remember, the wind's coming from the right there. Get us a little bit further over to the right here. Woo, that's quite a gust. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tilt the... Whoa, that's stall. I'm going to tilt the ailerons to the right, and I'm going to go ahead and push my pedal to the left at the same time. So I'm flying with a wing low. And all I'm going to do is use my rudder pedals for the purposes of keeping me lined up with the actual longitudinal line, and then I'm going to go ahead and use my ailerons to go ahead and keep me lined up with the runway itself. Woo! It's probably not the safest wind to be landing a Cessna 152. There we go. Again, my left foot is quite far forward. We're going to come right over the runway. We're going to go ahead and stick our right wheel down first, and then we're going to neutralize our rudder pedals and hold that aileron into the wind to keep us straight. Excellent. So you can see those are two basic uses for the rudder right away. The first one's going to be coordinating your turn. That's the one you're probably going to find you're going to be spending most of your time practicing. And the other one is going to be for these nasty crosswind landings, which, if I were you, I would have just landed on the other runway. It probably would have been a little simpler. But other than that, enjoy.